Good morning. Welcome back to season 2 of Sales TV. Delighted to be here, groundbreaking today with Jon Nicholson, who is our first guest to have actually joined us on the sofa on the studio. We have Alex, who is still banned for the biro theft, has not returned it in the week since last week, and we have Adam joining us as well online. But really, this is all about Jon. And what we would like to do, Jon, is hear a little bit about you. So tell us, obviously we know who you are, but what do you do?
So thanks for having me, Andy. A pleasure to be the first person here in the studio, of course. So I'm Jon Nicholson. I'm the Managing Director for Sales, Marketing, Customer Experience and Digital for Royal Mail and Parcelforce.
And that's a recent bring together, isn't it, of all those customer-facing things in Royal Mail, yeah?
It absolutely is. So the idea being that as an organisation, we need to bring all of those major customer touch points together.
Yep.
To make sure we get the best out of it and are satisfying what those customers' needs are in the modern world, which of course is different to what it was a few years ago even.
Absolutely. So we looked at some of the questions because we do actually prepare, believe it or not. And actually I got it wrong. So I'm going to ask, have you always been a salesperson?
Well, apart from the cliche that everybody's in sales, Andy, no, I haven't. I started my career in logistics in operations as a warehouse worker. And thankfully managed to work my way through the ranks to become part of the operational leadership team at T&T Express, as was at the time. And through that, I started visiting customers with the sales team or the sales manager at the time, where customers had operational problems or they were a bit more complex or they needed some, frankly, credibility maybe. And it was through that actually I got into talking to customers. And in fact, I spent years saying, I'm not a salesperson, and was almost a little bit embarrassed by the title, even when I did and was a bona fide salesperson or sales leader. But it was through that operational requirement that I became a salesperson ultimately.
And do you enjoy it?
It's brilliant, isn't it? It's a real privilege. So if nothing else, when I was in operations, I used to look at the salespeople, see them going out in their nice company cars and so on and thinking, God, that'd be much better than working away in this cold office or cold warehouse. But the reality is, the insight when you get to see hundreds of different organisations, you're meeting founders or directors or people from all walks of life in all different positions, you just get to see the inner workings of really UK PLC in this context, which actually most people don't often get to do. And to be able to explore how a company works, what's going on inside it, is a real joy. Yeah,
and what I think we wanted to talk about today is your passion for the lost art of account management, which we won't put any spoiler alerts out now, but I've always been a huge admirer of Royal Mail and your leadership, because I think you create a real learning culture, and I think you've done a lot. You're the first organisation to actually start to do the level 6 degree apprenticeships and take people directly from school and other places.
Yeah.
Why is that such passion for you?
So I think there's two things. And look, I have to give credit to my predecessor who really spearheaded the level 6 apprenticeships, of course, and I've been in a fortunate enough position to be able to build on that culture. For me, it's really important for two reasons. One, in the context of Royal Mail and what we need to do. We're a legacy organisation. We've been around for over 500 years. And we're really privileged to have very long tenure. People stay with Royal Mail, it's a job for life and so on, and that's great, but it also brings its own challenges, which means haven't always been on the journey of bringing new people into the organisation, haven't always had the luxury of developing people through the organisation. And actually, we reached a critical point where we're thinking there's quite a chunk of our sales force that's going to retire in the next 5 to 10 years. And that just becomes a business problem. This isn't about age demographics or discrimination. It's just a business problem that a lot of experience is going to walk out of the business to go and enjoy the rest of their lives, and rightly so. When we assessed what that gap was going to be, we realised we've got to do something different here. Right. We've got to have a pathway to meet the very simple objective that we need to continue selling, we need to continue servicing our customers, and we need skilled, talented, passionate people to be able to do that. And that was going to be a gap. The other part was we wanted to give people a reason to come and work at Royal Mail. We know, don't we, Andy? We talk about it a lot, the challenges of people becoming a salesperson, whether it's a career, a choice, or just one of those things that people fall into. And we know historically and typically it's the former. Well, actually, we wanted to create an environment where people go, I want to work at Royal Mail, and I want to work at Royal Mail because I can develop a whole career in sales. So there's a bit about external attraction for that. The other reason for me is almost entirely personal. So as I said, I started my career in operations, as a warehouse worker, didn't come from an academic background, didn't have qualifications and so on, and was able to build a career because I was fortunate enough to work in good companies where opportunity existed. I've had some brilliant bosses and some brilliant mentors who've helped me up.
Right.
Not everybody gets that privilege.
Yeah, you're right.
And I wanted to create an environment, create the opportunity for people who identified that in themselves, a platform as best we could to help them do that and through it. Because frankly, that's what it's about.
Yeah, I find, sorry to butt in there, Andy, John, I find your story amazing and what you're trying to do here with Royal Mail, but how do you make Royal Mail attractive to young salespeople? Because, it's, without sounding derogatory or saying the wrong thing, it doesn't kind of give off that vibe as this is the company to go work for if I'm a young salesperson. So I'd love to kind of hear how you're approaching that.
Yeah, and look, Alex, obviously I fundamentally disagree. Royal Mail is the sexiest organisation to work for, no matter what. I mean, have you ever seen a postie's legs in their shorts, Alex? Yeah, absolutely. But actually, joking aside, you strike on a really serious point, and that is that it is quite difficult to attract. So people, the UK population, the UK public has a perception of Royal Mail. Many people think we're still the post office, for example, and things like that. Some perceptions that are just, with respect, out of date. We touch an awful lot of businesses. We're still probably the 4th biggest employer in the UK, which is absolutely huge. So we are a massive employer, but people do see that operational side. They see postmen and women. And many people, some even internally, don't recognise that we've even got a sales force. So a big part of it, and at the risk of repeating myself a little bit, opening up those apprenticeship schemes. We're just about to launch imminently another 10 early apprentices, so level 4 apprenticeships, again to try and attract people that might not necessarily have had the best start in life or might not have nailed their GCSEs, to give them a career in. So although they might not be looking at Royal Mail going, that's the company I want to work for initially, actually if they're of the mindset they want to build a career, what we offer is really, really good. The challenge that I've got, and I think we have as an organisation, but I know I've definitely got in the context of sales, is how do I reach those younger people? How do I stop them wanting to look at some of the technology companies or the bigger brands that are out there, the automotive companies or whatever it might be? But I think the other point that we've all got to work harder at, and I know I've got to work harder at, is trying to articulate that difference between B2B sales and B2C sales. Of course, some ways as an organisation we bridge the both, but we are a predominantly a business-to-business organisation. And what that affords is opportunities beyond most other companies out there because of who we work with. But I think we've got to do a better job of telling that.
Yeah.
As an organisation, sometimes we find ourselves in the press and bits and pieces, and we need to do more to dispel those myths. It's not an easy balance.
Alex, I'd just like to say thanks for jumping in and ruining my segue, because I was going to say, talking about people who should be thinking about retiring, let's bring Adam and Alex in, but you stole that from me.
Hey,
but
it still works. Are you saying we're old?
No, I'm just saying you're more towards the twilight years of your careers, if that's all right.
Beards.
Yeah, there you go. I want to know how you're seeing a postman's legs every day. That's a slightly concerning issue.
What's funny, and John and I have had this conversation separately, is so I regularly see our postman's legs even in the winter.
Yeah, they are a hardy bunch.
Yeah, they are a hardy bunch, and I learned that actually there's a method in their madness. So they don't want to be wearing cold, wet trousers. So to avoid that risk, they wear shorts. And I guess they having worn shorts for many years, they don't feel the cold like you and I might.
That's an excuse I always give to my wife as to why I'm wearing shorts on Christmas Day, but now I know there's a science behind it. Boy, am I going to reinvigorate
You've got
that
a reason
argument.
now.
Yeah,
You've
yeah.
got a reason.
But circling back to John's point about kind of making Royal Mail this, this attractive place for younger people, I've had a really good experience with our postie. We have a PO box for our business, and something got delivered to the wrong address, and we phoned up customer service, and they couldn't help us because they couldn't give us the address of where it had been posted to, even though they knew it. So we stopped our postie that morning and told him about it, and he went out of his way to go and grab it from the address and hand deliver it to us. And he didn't have to do that, but for me, that kind of, I guess amplifies what you're saying about the Royal Mail and the service that you offer, John.
Yeah.
And I would argue that's someone in sales would do that, go out of their way. And so, yeah.
I think to your interesting point, everyone's in sales, and he's just sold the relationship that much more.
It's our biggest asset.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Our postmen and women are our brand. They are the bit that people see, all joking aside, shorts or otherwise. And that does make a difference. And people trust Royal Mail because of that relationship. They've got, we've got 100 or so thousand postmen and women out there. They have a good relationship with one of them, and they trust 100,000 people on that behalf. It just goes to show how important that is.
It's other things. So I'm going to ask you a question here. It's slightly putting you on the spot, but in a nice way.
Okay.
Do you know, through your impact at Royal Mail, how much student debt you've actually eradicated through the level 6 apprenticeship?
I don't actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so
it's about 2 million you've stopped people from going into, which is a phenomenal.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah,
that is phenomenal.
It's a great legacy.
And I think
can you explain that? What do you mean when you say that?
So if we look at, and I did it one night because I was interested. If we look at all the level 6 students that like the likes of Royal Mail, but also BT, Aon, people like that have brought in, because they're on a salary, they're not looking for student loans. They don't have a student loan. So actually they work and they earn at the same time, and consequently, the average student debt is £70,000 when they finish their degree. And if we look at it throughout all the level 6s, and Royal Mail spearheaded the level 6 as a trailblazer, there's about 7 million of student debt's been eradicated so far or not been taken on.
Wow.
And actually, because of the proportion of Royal Mail's apprentices, it's about 2 million for you guys.
Wow.
There you go. Mathematics.
Nice.
101.
And level 6 for our viewers, what is that and who does it appeal to?
It's a fully integrated degree, so it's exactly the same as any degree that you would go and do. So I did geography at Liverpool. It carries exactly the same weight and kudos, but it's a BSc, a Bachelor of Science in Sales. It's 3 years, okay, and it's 20% off the job. And I've had the privilege of seeing some of the great Royal Mail apprentices come out, and they're brilliant. Absolutely brilliant to start. I mean, I sat actually with them in group work 2 or 3 times, and the way that they think about the world in a nothing's a problem and everything's a solution is fantastic.
Yeah. Is that any age that is?
No, mate, you can't.
Do you know,
you might make a postie. Yeah, if that was it, John, will you accept my CV? A, it wasn't very subtle. B, no. Sorry,
Yeah.
Adam, you were going to say?
No, I was going to say I was jumping on that bandwagon, and it's really interesting what you say, John, about having to externalise the full breadth of things that the Royal Mail is, because I think we have a very good relationship with our postie. In fact, we have a number that deliver to us, and they're all delightful people, and we always stop them and have a bit of a chat, and give them a glass of water on a hot day, and they do your brand proud. But I think for the majority of the public, certainly young people, why would I want to join the Royal Mail? I don't want to be a postman. And actually, it's a huge, diverse organisation that employs hundreds of thousands of people in every conceivable role. You may be delivering letters, you may be driving, you may be working in logistics, you may be working in facilities, you could be working in sales or management or any one of 100 other jobs. And I think that one of the things that's really interesting, particularly about the place that we're at as a commercial institution, the country at the moment, is that organisations that have got that huge legacy and that huge workforce and have an irreplaceable role in the mechanics of the country become increasingly attractive places to go and work. When you look at the tech industry and the fact that so many people are being laid off and so many businesses are closing and not getting their funding, that's not a problem that the Royal Mail is ever going to face, because people will always have to have their letters and parcels delivered. And I think that maybe that's something that young people need to really think about. You know, you could literally work within your organisation your entire working life and never get bored, because, as you did, moving from, although not within Royal Mail, moving from warehouse to logistics to sales, you know, there's an opportunity for people to do exactly that within the Royal Mail, isn't there?
There absolutely is, but you make a really interesting point, Adam, which is people always need their letters and parcels delivered. But as an organisation, actually, we faced a systemic decline. People are sending less letters, and we, have to transform to be a parcels delivery business, which is much more competitive. And arguably, back to the context of sales, that's where we really do need a competitive, commercially thinking, forward-thinking, modern sales organisation, because it wasn't that long ago we were the monopoly provider for letters. We are still the monopoly provider for letters, but actually half of our revenues come from parcel delivery, e-commerce delivery, and so on, where we've got a number of competitors, and a number of competitors that have emerged, very quickly over the last 5 or 6 years or so. So that consistent change, that consistent adaptation of salespeople, that consistent training and education of them is fundamental. We could have, as an organisation, sat back and gone, no, we'll carry on doing exactly what we're doing, but we would have found ourselves at a point of extinction.
Right.
So we can't, and are very aware, we cannot take that for granted. We have to remain ahead.
And that leads on to, 2 questions to kind of discuss. My research and what I'm doing, and actually, delighted that, we're going to do that together in the coming weeks. But to me, it's a leader that sets a learning culture, and I want to explore a little bit, why is that so passionate to you? I mean, as you said, you could just go, it's fine, we'll do what you do, but you have basically gone, I want people to develop themselves, and you've given them a real freedom in framework. It's applauding it, but why?
Well, like I say, it is a combination of all those things. There is a piece around survival. There's a piece that says to me, I'm really fortunate, we've got a sales force of about 400 people in the different roles that you'd expect in a large sales force. All of them now at different points in their career journey. Some have finished their apprenticeship, some have been here for 30 years, some are just starting their careers, and so on and so forth. But the majority of them are driven. They want to do better, and there is nothing more frustrating, is there, as an individual who's driven, who wants to achieve, looking around going, well, what can I do? And I think particularly sales as a career is one of those great career choices where the natural route isn't necessarily through management. You can go your whole career being an individual contributor, have a very successful career, fund your life in a way that you want to do it, without having to take on the pressures of managing or leading people if it's not your bag. But sometimes that's quite difficult to do, within pay boundaries and consistency and reward schemes and so on. And for me, therefore, then personal development is a way that allows people to continue to grow within the sphere that they want to play in, but not go stale. And that doesn't work for everybody. My personal view is, I want to create the platform where it's open to everybody, but you've got to stick your hand up and want it as well. You've got to commit to it. There's some of the things we absolutely mandate in terms of development, of course we do, but some of the extra work we do is discretionary for people. They put their hands up for it and say, I want to go and do a master's in sales leadership, or whatever it might be. The very fact that they're taking on that commitment is admirable to them, and we will create a space to allow them to do it as best we can. It doesn't come without pressures, of course, but
I think the very nature of what you're saying is, you're not looking to motivate people. You're letting them motivate themselves, but you're creating this culture of high learning
Yeah.
And I think what you've also done as well, I know what you've done, is create a really strong psychologically safe area. And if you look at the work of Amy C. Edmondson, the Fearless Organisation, I look at this and you wouldn't necessarily go, yeah, Royal Mail, a fearless organisation.
Yeah.
But actually, that's from the 7 years I've known you, that's exactly what you've built.
And again, as ever, it's a fine balance. You know, we're a regulated organisation as well because of the place we pay for what we do for delivering the universal service obligation. We're the market leader in our sphere, so we've got the additional requirements and onus is placed upon us there. We were talking about it earlier, weren't we, around spending time with competitors and what that means and how we have to consider how we act and all of those types of things. So we've got to be very mindful of those boundaries. So we don't want to create fear, we want people to be fearless, but we also need people who are educated and trained enough to know exactly where those lines are, because the consequences for us of getting it wrong are arguably more severe than they might be for some of our competitors.
Yeah, that's true. Guys, what do you think about that?
Oof, I've got a few thoughts coming to mind. I think, off the back of something that you were saying there, John, I can't help but think that you're doing an amazing job for your sales force, but we are sort of in this inflection point where buyer behavior has been changing for many years, and it's becoming harder and harder for salespeople to penetrate that zone of resistance. And traditionally we've said, do more with less, make more calls, send more emails, and all it's done is forced buyers to make that zone of resistance higher and thicker. So I'd love to know, what your view is about that and what you're doing to help enable your sales force to align better with the buyer.
Yeah, so Alex, you make a really interesting point. I think it's one of the well-worn discussions of sales, isn't it? Is metrics, calls, does activity equal an output and so on? And the answer is, of course it does to a certain degree, but it's not the panacea to all of the questions. Actually, if I look at my peer groups and experience, and when I talk to other members of the ISP, for example, and around call metrics, some of our metrics, our KPIs are typically lower. So our call rates are typically lower than what you might expect to see given the size of our customer base and so on. And part of that is because we want to create the autonomy. But even our what you might consider are the lower ranks within our sales team are, in our mind, senior people. They're of a managerial grade. So we want to allow them to do the job and manage their territory, their portfolio in a way that's right for their territory and their portfolio. But we still have the guardrails up. We still need to manage performance. We still need to understand what good looks like in the context of Royal Mail, of that territory, of the peers. And of course, we've got both brands, Royal Mail and Parcelforce, who serve two different groups of customers. So we've always got this balance to check and compare against. It's almost like having access to another organisation, a competitor organisation, to see how things are working, which is really, really lucky. But we do have to still keep those measures in place, Alex. And naturally, if we've got people who are underperforming or under pressure, which happens in sales, of course it does, they will kick out against those and say, oh, it's because of these. But that goes back to that accountability piece. So we are we've had quite a high coaching culture for quite a while, but literally as we speak, we're recruiting specifically for performance coaches to come in, and these are new roles that we've created, who I'm very clear are not managers. So they are on part of the leadership team, for want of a better word, but they're not managers, they are coaches. And that is to really help people improve their performance, again in a safe space, where they're not at fear of being managed, quote unquote, but are just there to work on the areas of their game that they need to improve. I'm not a fan of particularly using sport analogies in business. I think it's a bit overused, but I do want them to be seen as a performance coach, a fitness coach almost, because I think that allows us as a leadership team, but also as a sales population, to identify needs in a different way. Some people will need performance managing by the metrics and so on, and they will perform or not because of that. Other people aren't going to respond to that, and like all groups, we've got that whole mix in between. So it's just tapping into that. We won't always get it right, of course we won't. It's just too big and vast, but we'll do our best.
Cool.
I love the fact that you've got a separate coach. I've always struggled with a manager coaching their team as well because they've always got the metrics in mind.
Of course.
Do they really care about the individual and their personal, their performance?
Yeah.
I mean,
So
they do, but will they get the most out of them is the
just
question.
just changing tack to one final question. We've talked about this, and we've kind of it's emerged through the conversation about this ballooning kind of tech world and tech salespeople and SDRs, and you kind of kicked around last week that there's a bit of a lost art. His key account management and sales management, and his SDRs and his inside sales reps, etc. But this kind of bit in the middle, and guys, if you could bring the slide up for us. That would be great because I stole this from Neil Rackham, and Neil Rackham talked about fundamentally the viewpoint that actually sales was going to be, the smile, and everything was going to go uber transactional or uber complex, and that bit in the middle, which would arguably people creating value, was going to disappear.
Yeah.
But actually, it didn't. And actually, I remember. Phil Jones from Brothers saying the thing that kept him up at night, I think we were at the same conference, was actually the people with the skill sets to kind of go into mid-size accounts and manage territories, as you said, that they're not necessarily there anymore. And I know you're passionate about actually we don't forget that more traditional account management role. What with?
Absolutely, and it might be symptomatic of who we are and how we've grown up as an organisation, but it's very, very front of mind for me. So the weight of our sales resources in what we would call account management, our account directors, regional account managers and inside account managers across both brands, Royal Mail and Parcel Force. That's where very clearly the bulk of our revenue sits, but also the bulk of our growth expectation sits. And our new business teams and our strategic business development teams do a phenomenal job in that complex and that semi-transactional sale that we do. It's absolutely valuable, but the revenue that we need to achieve really sits in that account management space. And I think, I don't want to criticise what goes on in the SaaS world and so on, but the readings, the teachings that we read on sales are so focused on that SaaS and then the almost account management that is spoken about as service. And I feel a little bit like that doesn't do it justice.
Agreed.
Because it is that account management, and they've got to tread a really fine line between the sales metrics that we were just talking about, can you grow this customer, please, but also can you keep this customer? And the customer's expectation is you're there to manage my account and everything within it. That's a really high pressure role where you are balancing a number of different skill sets actually. And we talked historically about hunters and farmers. Again, I think there's this bit in the middle, and I don't know what the right terminology would be in hunters and farmers. I won't have a go at trying to come up with one on the fly. Whereby I think we've got to spend a lot more effort as leaders of the industry and with the ISP and places like Cranfield, understanding what good looks like in that space. Because it's very difficult to define to them, you're a salesperson, you've got a revenue growth target, you've got a retention target, this is how you focus your efforts. It's a really difficult mix for people to get.
I think you're right, and I do think it's the forgotten art. It's it's difficult to. How do you behave? How do you go in and say these are the things that I think you as an account should be thinking about?
Yep.
Arguably those salespeople are spending more time with customers and people with issues and pressures than the people that they're talking to. So they're looking for real insight and direction about where they should be thinking about.
They are, yeah. And they're arguably the ones that have got to know the businesses much more intimately.
Yep.
They are dealing with the peaks and troughs. And if you've got a portfolio of 50 customers or 150 customers, whatever the number is, actually to have a way of managing that, prioritise that, deal with that, it's not an easy gig.
No.
And so we need to support people in doing better at that.
It's absolutely not at all. Adam, 30 seconds before we close out.
You said about the fact that in the last 5 years, a lot of competitors have come into the marketplace. And once upon a time, you had a monopoly. I think in the future, once again, you will have a monopoly. And the reason that I think that is that when intelligent buyers look at what the options are, they can go to a new company, not a company that's been around 500 years. They can go to a company that has 10 or 50 or 100 times as many staff and delivery vehicles, that covers every inch of the UK rather than just the profitable parts of the UK. And many of the competitors that have arrived recently, I mean, there are one or two that haven't, but many of them are trying to do it on a shoestring. So, I'll deliver parcels in the back of my car. And I think as we move away from a more capitalist to a more socialist society, I think that having company-owned vehicles doing company jobs will become a prerequisite of organisations being. So I think that many of the competitors you have will be stripped away. And I for one, think that the Royal Mail has been a standard bearer for a British organisation for many years, and all of the maligning that it might have had over the last few years, I think is very misplaced and very unfair.
That's cool. Well, we're in danger of an overrun, so thank you for that, Adam. Thanks for Alex. Most importantly, John, thank you for being the first on the sofa. It's been great. Thanks to the Grenville team here, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye now.
Thank you very much.